So, hey, I'm Shane from Shane's Law. We're here to talk about one of our recent client victories here at Shane's Law. We always like to talk about when we're able to help our clients achieve a fabulous result, something what we feel like is really a great result for the client and able to help them or through some difficult spot. Ashley, tell us about AJ's case.
This is a case, if you're a motorcycle rider, this is your biggest nightmare. He was riding his motorcycle, avid rider. This has been a hobby of his, since his teens, riding on dirt bike. Actually, how he met his wife. They're both avid riders together, at least up until his accident. Was coming around a curve in a bend when a tractor trailer who did not do his due diligence to double check to his surroundings started pulling out in front of him. Our client did everything he could to bail, was basically down on his side, road rash, trying to avoid the accident, but couldn't avoid hitting right into that tractor trailer that crossed his path.
And like you say, it's every motorcyclist's nightmare, basically. And especially somebody who's been riding for a long time. I think they just hear more and more horror stories and things like that. I mean, in this particular case, it happened.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you hear about it, but you always think not me until it happens. And unfortunately, it happened to our client bad enough where he had to be airlifted to the hospital from the scene.
What were his injuries?
He got really lucky. I know that doesn't sound like a right sentence in this context, but considering what he went through and the fact that he was airlifted, he broke 2 metatarsal bones, so the longer bones at his toe.
Okay.
Had a really big gash in his upper thigh that they needed to clean out and then stitch up, and he required going to a wound care center for weeks afterwards, getting it cleaned out and rebandaged with a few other cuts that needed some stitches, and that was it.
So to be clear, that thigh they have to clean out and that's fairly intense while they have to do it.
Yes. It was something that within a few weeks after the accident was better, and they was just going in for about a 5-month period just to make sure it was healing right. But considering that he was on a motorcycle and it was a tractor trailer, the fact that he's got 2 broken bones in his foot and 2 gnarly scars now is insane.
Right. Yeah. It could have been much worse is what I would say. And
much worse.
I mean, clearly they thought it was much worse, which is when they airlifted him out of the scene.
A huge part of that's got to be, well, and not that it wasn't blood loss, because the gashes were really, really big, so they really needed to get that controlled. And what's crazy is the evaluation was I want to say it was like a 26-minute ambulance drive versus 16-minute helicopter ride, and they still opted for the helicopter if they were nervous enough. Yeah. So there's a decent amount of blood loss, but again, overall, surprising.
Motorcycle versus tractor trailer injuries, much more manageable than it could have been, is what I would say.
In these scenarios, you usually hear the word fatal. So the fact that he's up and walking around and that was the extent of his injuries, he's very thankful for.
So how did the insurance company deal with all this? Once we presented the demand and made our claim, how did they deal with it?
We actually did get a little pushback at first, which surprised me. The insurance company said that, there's no proof that he took evasive maneuvers. We don't know that he wasn't speeding, more or less trying to pass blame, which, if you're familiar with North Carolina's laws, I knew that was a bluff, because if they really felt that he had any sort of contribution to this accident, they wouldn't have played ball at all. They would have denied liability outright, saying, hey, we don't owe you for this because your client was a percentage at fault.
And it sounds like what they're trying to say is, yeah, our guy did something wrong, but you can't prove you did everything right. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that essentially their argument?
Essentially was the argument. And I said, well, if we look at the accident report, our client's not listed as speeding. He talks about the weather conditions. The weather conditions were fine that day. Fortunately, we've got the data to be able to pull that stuff now afterwards. And the way he had road rash on him, how can you tell me he didn't try evasive maneuvers when he burned up the road trying to get on his side to avoid hitting that?
Which I think there's a pretty fair argument that honestly, he wouldn't even have to do it. I guess you could argue last clear chance, but effectively he wouldn't have to take evasive maneuvers
but for that tractor trailer pulling out
the tractor trailer. I mean, and no evidence that he's speeding, no evidence that he's doing anything wrong, and yet they still fight him on it, which try to blame the motorcyclist, which is pretty common in these type of cases and situations.
Absolutely, but fortunately, even just a little pushback from us, and they completely backed off those arguments.
So what kind of result were you able to get for him?
This was a really, really good one. So even though they gave us pushback, they acknowledged the severity of the accident and the scenario they put him in, and I think a huge part of it was we really emphasized that although this didn't alter his life as far as health goes, he does have some scars, but it's nothing permanent as far as pain goes. It altered his life in the sense that him and his wife will not ride anymore.
Really?
And that's a hobby they shared. So we really harped on them, this accident taking that away from him, and we were able to get a $175,000 settlement for him.
In the tractor trailer scenario is a fairly minor injury, so a lot of this was the loss of enjoyment of him being a motorcyclist and never doing his hobby again. And he said him and his wife rode together as well, so now that's gone for both of them, and it's just a bad situation. And like you say, it's every motorcyclist's nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, he's one of one of the best spirited people I've met. You know, as much as it upsets him he's not riding anymore, he doesn't express that at all. He's just thankful that it didn't kill him, and he's okay with walking away from it if it means, you know, not having to ever live through a scenario or chance a scenario like that again.
Huh?
Yeah.
Did he tell you what he was going to do with the money?
Actually, he did not. And you know what? I didn't think to ask. I was really excited about it, but I didn't think to ask what he would do with it.
And how'd he feel about it when you called?
Oh, he was ecstatic. Because his injuries were more minor. His medical bills really weren't significant. The airlift was the biggest thing, and we were able to work with the provider on that as well, so we weren't paying the full bill. So he walked away with a very large sum of money, which I was happy to give to him after, you know, having to live through that.
And my guess is he's probably talked to other motorcyclists and heard their horror stories of how they got blamed for the accident and the other side fought him and didn't want to pay anything, and walking away with nothing on these kind of cases.
Yeah.
All right, well, it sounds like you did a great result for AJ and got him a wonderful settlement in this particular case. I hate he can't ride bikes or won't ride bikes anymore, but it sounds like overall he was lucky to have you as a lawyer that would push to overcome that initial blame the victim mentality of the trucking company and get a great settlement for him.
Yeah, it was good.
All right, thank you. Remember, hit like and subscribe down below for more new updated stories and client victories from Shane Smith Law, and click the bell for notifications. And always remember, if you're in pain, call Shane, 980-999-9999.
In pain, so I call Shane, 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.